Hey crew, Coach Josh here with GarageGangGyms.com, and today in our clean series, we are finally taking the clean from the floor. We're doing the full clean. Now, if you haven't seen any of the previous episodes, please go back because there's so many things we're going to gloss over in this video that you might need to make sure that your clean is actually getting better. We started from what we call as the high hang with a tall clean and the high hang clean. We went to the regular hang clean, a low hang clean, and now today we're finally taking it from the floor. And it's so crucial that you know all of those other steps because from the floor today we're going right into that low hang and everything should just be automatic at that point. If you're thinking about anything but this liftoff today, you need to go back and see those videos. Now in today's video, we're going to cover three things. We're going to cover our stance, what's going on there, how you can set it up so it's correct for you. We're going to talk about how to make sure that bar is coming back toward us so it makes sense with that low hang clean video we did before this video so that everything can just flow. And then we talk about making sure that the speed of the bar is accelerating and not just yanking it off the floor and actually slowing down as we go. And we actually do cover a few more of the advanced type things that we'll be covering in future videos. So again, speaking of future videos, we're going to be doing more than just the clean. This is not the end of the series. We're going to be going over some more advanced type cues in the next video. Then we'll have a video about common faults and how you can actually modify your program a little bit with certain pauses and certain positions and other exercises that will make the clean so much better for you. And after that, how to program the clean for your week and how to deal with all of the extra cues, all of the extra movements that we'll talk about in future videos so that you guys can actually structure a good weightlifting program for you so that it's specific to your needs. So that you don't miss any of those videos, subscribe to this channel, Garage Gang Gyms, and like this video. It really gets me fired up to do more. And please, if you haven't seen it already, people are leaving comments, asking questions, and today's video is actually influenced by a different comment from the last video. And if you know who you are, you'll see that I did in fact tuck in my shirt. So please, I really take those comments seriously. I take those likes really seriously. It really motivates me. So let's do the clean from the floor. Okay, first things first, just like we did in all of the other videos of this series, we're going to review the drill that we did for the last 2 weeks. It's that low hang clean. We're going to do this low hang clean to not only warm us up, but also to give us a point that as we're taking it from the floor today, once we find that point from that drill, everything can become automatic and we don't have to think so that we can really focus on some of the key things that we're going to be covering from the floor. So let's do the low hang clean first. So I'll run you through a bunch of the cues we've been working on. Favoring that hook grip, nice and tall. I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to bend in my knees. I'm going to stay over this bar. It's not touching my leg. I'm going to push my knees back even further to get a big stretch. Once I've cleared the knees, I'm going to let my knees shift forward. And this is the low hang position that we've been working on. So from here, I'm going to push my knees out of the way, lift my chest up. That bar is going to come in nice and tight. I'm going to go through my full clean. So we're going to do that a couple times yet. Find that low hang position, making sure that we're somewhat forward on our feet. We're going to push those knees out of the way, chest comes up, push, staying in a nice even position. One more time. Nice and tall. Back up. Okay. So now we're going to be taking it from the floor. I highly recommend you start with the least amount of weight you can get away with, where you can go slow through these positions. Even if your clean is, say, 200 pounds, you may only want to start with 95 pounds, so 50% or less. That way you can really slow some things down because when we're working from the floor, we're going to be adding a pause at that low hang position before actually taking it all the way through. So let's get that weight on now. All right, we're finally here taking the bar off the floor. So let's talk about our stance, how we get the bar from the floor to that low hang position. We're going to talk a little bit about how we actually build speed as we get going, kind of linking all of our drills together in one exercise. And we're going to be covering the difference between a static start and a dynamic start, and why I highly recommend you start with a static start for a very, very long time before we actually add movement before lifting this bar. So let's talk about our stance first. So when I look down, I have 2 straps on my shoe. I am going to have this bar, when I look straight down, over that first strap. It's the white strap. Now, I'm actually going to have my toes slightly turned out. And when I pick my stance width, what I'm looking for is when I squat down to the bar, so I'm getting ahead of myself just a little bit, but just bear with me. When I squat down to the bar, I need to make sure my feet are separated enough that my hips can sit between my legs. We're not doing a squat, so this should not be your squat stance. But if your typical deadlift stance, when you're picking up the biggest weight you possibly can, is somewhere in here, we're going to be slightly wider than that, and slightly our toes are going to be out, because again, I need to make sure that I can get my back in as good of a straight line as I possibly can. And if my feet are too close, we're going to be nice and rounded in our lower back. And that just puts the bar out in front and makes this a lot harder than it needs to be. So when I'm looking down, I'm seeing this knurling here. So it goes from the polish point to the knurling. When I look down, it's on the outside third of my foot. Okay, that just is what works for me. Some people are wider, some people are narrower. Again, when I squat down, I am in a position where I can keep my lower back relatively flat. So that is the cue that I would use. I'm going to squat down to this bar. So without touching the bar, I'm going to sit down and bring my shins to the bar. So most people, what they're going to do, because it's comfortable, is they're going to take their body weight and pull it way back onto their heels. What that's going to do is it's going to put a lot of strain in your hips. Your shoulders are going to be behind the bar, which we've talked about with all of these other exercises. That's not what we want to do, and we certainly don't want to start there. And it's going to push our knees out forward. Now, if we're too far forward onto our toes, we're going to lose contact with the floor with our heels, and it's going to cause us to pitch over right off of the ground. Our goal off of the floor is for our hips and our shoulders to rise in a straight position, so that as I'm getting past the knee, then I can start going through that hang mechanic where we actually are lifting our chest. But from the floor to that mid knee, my torso shouldn't really change angles, just like we've been working on. So again, I'm going to squat down so that my back can get flat. As I'm squatting down, I'm bringing my body weight forward slightly, not fully onto my toes, but more forward of my heels than just on my heels. So I'm going to squat down. My shins touch the bar. So that's a good place to start. Now, in this position, I'm very active. I can just sit here all day and my legs will start to burn out. That's a really good sign that you're on your legs. If you're too far back, your legs aren't going to burn much. Maybe just your back is going to burn. If you're too far forward, your knees are going to start to burn. It should be not a comfortable position, but a position that, yup, I feel my legs. Because our goal from the floor is to assign as much tension into our body as we possibly can. And as we break that bar off the floor, we're trying to maintain that tension so that we can do all of the previous stuff we've worked on. And it starts with picking it from the floor. That's also why this is one of the later videos in the series. It's not the last one. There's plenty of other videos coming out after this, but it's one of our later ones because a terrible pull from the floor can actually make all of the other things that we've talked about just go out the window. So it's really important we got from the low hang through the full clean done well, so that this little piece that we're doing, we can hyper focus on it so it doesn't kill our clean. So I'm squatting down, shins are on the bar. I'm nice and active on my legs. Now, some people, they're going to want to start with their hips lower than their knees. And again, that's not a great mechanic for pulling, maybe for squatting, but again, my back is rounded in this position. And some people are going to want to start with their hips really high. Again, that's why we want to be slightly forward and our shins touching the bar. From here, I'm not even touching the bar yet. I should be able to take my sternum and lift it to my chin. So I'm literally taking my sternum and lifting it towards my chin. And what that's going to do is it's going to push my chest up and everything is going to get tight. Now, to break a cue that a lot of you have heard in the past is at the start we want to push our knees out. The problem with thinking about our knees is if we just push them out, the tendency is for us to lose pressure on the inside edges of our feet and put it all to the outsides. And that's not a very balanced position. It's also not very strong. So instead of thinking about our knees, I want you to think about your shins. So we talked about this with a squat before. We want to rotate our shin so that as we go down, that knee lines up with our second toe, with the squat and with our clean. So when I'm in position, I'm not just letting my knees come in or pushing them way out. I'm just going to take my shins rather, and I'm going to rotate them out slightly. What's going to happen if I do this well is my feet, the ball of my foot is going to shorten and clutch, so it's going to come in and back. It's going to kind of bolt me to the ground, and my feet are going to start trying to pry the floor. But I have equal pressures everywhere, and all it takes is just slightly rotating the shin. So I'm in this position, I'm squatting down, I rotate my shins out. Now I really feel my legs, my glutes. I can lift that sternum up, and I'm in a great position. Now, from here, if I reach down, my arms can barely touch. My fingers are just barely touching. And that's perfect because most people, they'll start too low and their arms will be kind of loose. We want a nice, tight arm position. So if this is my position and I can just barely, I'm going to grab onto this bar, put my hooks in. I'm going to reassign that tension and my arms are going to be straight. So again, if I had let go, I can just barely get my fingers on it. I crouch down, grab on, I come back up, sternum is up, and that is my beginning stages of the start. Now, what I'm going to do is walk away. My legs are burning a little bit. And I'm going to talk about static versus dynamic before we pull this off the ground. A static start is when you get into a position similar to what you just saw me doing. I get tight and I hold, and then from there, the bar is going to lift off of the floor. I highly encourage all of you start with a static start. You get tight, get super tight, whole body's burning, then you initiate the lift off. Because the next thing is called the dynamic start. When people get into position and don't understand how to build tension from the floor to begin with, they're going to be loose. They're going to come in here, oh, whatever, I don't care, I'm really loose, okay, really get tight and go. Because a dynamic start is your body moves into that starting position before you lift that bar off the ground. It isn't just stacked and tight. You're actually starting away from that position typically. The typical dynamic start has somebody lifting their hips back so that their legs can relax. Then they'll torque themselves in by rotating those shins, lifting their chest up, and then they'll go. But again, until you 100% know exactly where that start position is from a static start, there's no need to try to figure out how to do a dynamic, because if we screw up the first 3 inches of this lift, it's going to put us out of the position for all of the other things we've talked about. So start static, lift less weight for now until you build that confidence, then we can talk dynamic start. Once we get into that start, our goal, thinking back to the low hang clean, is we remember we cleared the knees and we dropped ourselves forward towards the balls of our feet slightly, and that's what brought the bar below our knee. So in order to get into this position, if we're starting down here, shins are more forward, we're more forward. The first thing that has to happen is the bar needs to come back toward me as I come up. So the tendency for people is to let their arms kind of just relax and then they'll move their body, and that bar separates from us. We want that bar immediately off the floor to be coming back towards our contact point. So this kind of debunks the idea of the bar needs to move in a straight line. That's not true. We actually want it to slightly favor towards us and moving mostly vertical, right? Because getting it higher allows us to get under it a little bit easier. But if we favor it towards us, it's going to help us keep our balance, especially as that weight gets heavier and it wants to pull us onto our toes. We're pulling it back towards us. We can clear our knees. We can get under it in a great position. We make that contact and go. If it starts out in front of us, because maybe we pull off the floor and there's separation, or we drop our hips too much because we're doing a dynamic start and it kicks that bar out and it loops around our knees, then all of the things we practice make no sense to our body, because kicking it out like that, we're in this awkward, weird position. Then we either try to yank it back towards us, which is probably going to cause us to jump back, or it's going to cause that bar to go way out in front of us and we chase it. So it's really important we practice drawing that bar back into that low hang position. From the low hang position, we can go through our full clean. So that's what I'll do. I'll get static start tight. I'm going to make that bar come toward me. I'm going to pause at that point in our low hang. Then from there, I'm going to treat it just like our low hang. I'm going to push my knees back further. I'm going to lift my chest up, and I'm going to go. Okay. Looking down, right over that first strap, squatting down, rotating my shins, my tibias. I'm nice and tight. I can barely get my fingers on the bar, and I'll get tight. I came back, paused, pushed further back, continued, and went. Now, just like we did with all of our other drills, we're only going to do a few of these with pauses. Eventually, we need to take that pause out because doing a clean from the floor is one fluid motion. So let's practice that 2 more times. 1 repetition, set it down, rest. 1 repetition, set it down. Then we'll talk about trying to do it in 1 fluid motion, because that's going to be the third thing that gets people into trouble, is when we actually take that pause away. So again, looking straight ahead, toes are out, over my first strap. I'm going to squat down, rotate just slightly at the shins so I feel my feet clutching. I'll get tight. First thing is that bar comes back toward me, and then I'll pause. So I get tight, big breath. And it's all about hitting those same positions so that we can get under that bar faster. If as you're doing this, everything is going haywire, number 1, check the weight that you're using. Sometimes in weightlifting gyms, they'll have 25 millimeter bars. They're the women's bars. They're 33 pounds. Then most gyms have 10-pound bumper plates or even 15-pound bumper plates. If you're using 10s, make sure you use clips, because 10s tend to be pretty floppy, and I actually hate 10-pound bumper plates. I'd rather use change plates. 15s are pretty good. They're a little bit thicker typically, and you should still use clips, because even I'm using clips right now, but they have less flex to them, much like the 10. And if you're using the 15s and the 33-pound bar, we're talking 66 pounds. It shouldn't be overly heavy for you to do. And in fact, if 66 pounds right now is pretty hard for you, I highly recommend you strip the bar, you go back into just doing low hang cleans for now, and really work to build up your deadlift strength and your front squat strength. Once you've gotten into the 150 plus weight for the front squat and even 180 plus deadlifts, then go back to the clean and start working, because we don't want your strength to be what's limiting you when you're first learning. If you feel like, wow, 65 is so intimidating, it's such a heavy weight, please go back to just using the empty bar. You can start adding weight to that as you feel comfortable from those hang positions we've talked about. Build up that strength, so the last thing that you're worried about is 65 pounds going to be too hard? Okay, so let's do our 3rd rep here. I'm not going to talk, I'm just going to flow, but I will pause. Okay, let's talk about taking the pause away. Our 3rd cue today. The deadlift, the clean. We are going to slowly speed up as that bar gets closer and closer and closer to us. Okay, the bar starts really far away from us, from our hip, and it gets really close to here. So as it gets closer to our hip, the bar itself should be moving faster. Not necessarily us, but we will, but the bar itself. So what I mean is, from the floor to that low hang position, going slow is fine. You can't go, iceberg slow, because as we add more weight, going too slow off the floor, you're just going to get fatigued, and it's going to be really hard to round that knee. But it should not be, well, how fast can I go? Because just like we talked about in the low hang, the hardest part for people from the low hang, and I'll remind you, is coming back, then up. Because what they want to do is they come back and then just go for it, right? Because they're trying to go super, super fast. The same types of problems are going to happen if you try to go really fast off the floor. And the worst thing that happens, and this happens to so many people, is because you're trying to go really fast, you'll have a tendency to yank. So you'll get tight, you'll dip down, arms will bend, and then you yank off the floor. And that yank gets you basically to your hang position already, or it kicks you in a weird position. But it happens so fast, your brain isn't thinking, oh, I'm in my hang position already, I need to go. No. Also, a second thing that happens as people get actually stronger is when they start coming off the floor too much. And I'm bad at this as well sometimes. If it's heavy and I'm a little nervous about it, I tend to pull it off the floor a little faster. What'll happen is that bar kicks out, and that's something that we talked about how that's not good. For me, again, I'll get tight. Maybe I'm doing a dynamic start. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's kind of heavy. I got to really try for it. And I go, and that bar ends up going out and around. And then I'm not in the best position to do my clean. And the tendency for me is as I round that knee, my hips are going to go forward. Not something you want to do when the weight is heavy enough it could hurt you. So we got to make sure we stay diligent, right? These static starts are a great way to do it. And again, we want to slowly accelerate. We start at 0 miles an hour. By the time we're at our knee, we're going, 50 miles an hour. Past the knee, we get into the 80s. And then at the contact point through the explosion point, we're doing 120 miles an hour, okay? We don't want to peel out. So it'll look like this. I'll do 2 for you. Okay, so what happened? When I took the pause out, some artificial thing, right? The pause, that changed my position just a little bit, right? Because I'm pausing, trying to get myself into the right position to leverage. That's why it's really important we take that pause out when we can. Now, in the future, I may invite you in future videos about the clean. We'll be talking about more advanced cues, which is another video coming, but also modifications to the clean and how certain modifications can make you strong in certain positions. And one that comes to mind is actually pausing at the shin before you do your clean. Now, for now, while you're learning, it will change your positions because you're not quite comfortable. So let's take that pause away for now. In the future, if we feel we need to really hone in on drawing that bar back, pulling your knees back, whatever it is, or maybe it's a lower back strength thing that we're working on, then we can start doing what's called the iso lift off, or a halt clean, where we pause and we would go. For now, though, let's take that pause out. And you'll see, even in mine, when I took the pause out, because I wasn't thinking about cueing you, my technique changed a little bit, became more smooth, it was faster, I got under the bar faster. And that's what I want for you guys to feel too. Now, something that came to mind while I was doing that, because I'm thinking about teaching you guys, not so much about doing the cleans for myself, is your arm position relative to your knee position at the start. So I'll show you a couple more reps after this, after I explain this to you. But a nice, easy tip to see, are my hips too low or are my hips too high, is for most people, their knee and the notch of their elbow, they're going to line up pretty close, because that allows me from the knee to the shoulder, essentially, because right arm is connected to the shoulder, to go straight, because my legs will go back, my torso stays in the same position, and I pull back. Okay, that's why starting here can be so beneficial, is it's a straighter line to that contact point before we go. So when you're lining up, give yourself a check, right? Check your static start. Maybe in this set, you're gonna go down, you're gonna look down, oh, my knees are too far forward, I'm too vertical. Lift your hips up a little bit. Oh yeah, now I feel my quadriceps. Or maybe you were too high. Find that position, hold that position, shins are out, you take your breath. And again, take your time. Knees line up with my elbows. Big breath. Now, in the past with hangs and things like that, we would lower it down, get into the next rep, go. You could technically drop this every time. Right now, I actually have one of my daughters is sleeping, just right there. So I don't want to be dropping it. She's napping, I'm trying to be courteous. So I always will land it on my legs, carefully set it down. I'm trying to be quiet. You certainly don't have to do that. You could drop it every time. I do recommend though, while you're first learning, bring it down and maybe even stand up. look at your feet, adjust, get down, and do your next rep. I'm comfortable doing multiple repetitions in a row. I'm very confident in my positions, my starting positions especially, so that when I catch it, stand up, I just go down. And because I'm just so aware of where my start position is, I know if that bar is a little out in front of me, if I'm too far back, I can kind of just feel it. So in between reps, you'll see me looking down because I'm just making sure, yep, everything's good. Until you get to that point, again, you may drop it, stand up, maybe step back for a second. We're not trying to win any speed records here. Line up, okay. Squat down, shins are out, okay. Big arch, okay. Yep, tight, okay, go. You may need 15 seconds in between repetitions. Again, we're trying to learn. As you get more comfortable with it, there will be days you can do more repetitions in a shorter period of time. But when you're warming up, I highly recommend you treat each repetition as its own. Because if you have a bad habit in your warm-up, that's just going to follow with you into the heavier weights. Now, the ultimate test, to remind ourselves, just like we talked about with the low hang, we've been doing the full cleans. Can we achieve all of the same positions, do everything the same, except when I go from my explosion point to racking the bar, can I rack it sooner so that I'm power cleaning? I don't want you thinking about, can I get that bar moving faster? Can I get it higher so that I can power clean it? No. I want you to be so ingrained that you know, yep, and you can get under it faster. So let's check that. We'll do 2 sets of 1 with our weight that we've been practicing. And if something goes crazy wrong with your power clean, send me that video, okay? I'll gladly give you a form check. You just have the video similar to how I have it, 45 degrees off of the corner of your platform or the corner of you. If you're doing your power cleans and something goes wrong and you can't figure out what it is, please, on Instagram at Garage Gang Gyms, please just send it to me in the DM. I will gladly do a voiceover, draw some lines for you, and give you specific cues as to why you're doing that clean wrong. Okay, the power clean, everything's the same. We're just gonna go faster through the explosion into the catch. Here we go. Start again. So both times I screwed up, okay? I was under it fast enough, things like that. But something we're gonna talk about in a future video, some advanced things to think about, is I felt myself do it and I feel myself do it on heavier cleans once in a while. I let go of my hook grip too soon. So what I did was I was thinking, okay, pull right here instead of holding my hook and keeping my arms fixated to the bar so that I can actually use the bearings to help me turn it over. I got lazy, let go. I literally let go. The bar went up. I pulled myself under fast enough, right? Because I still gained that momentum from pulling, but I let go. So I wasn't able to use the bar to help me rack it. And I just basically pushed my elbows forward. So I was actually catching it kind of loose. And on that second one, maybe I'll slow it down so you can see it, the bar kind of skipped up and down in my neck because I had let go. So again, we'll talk about this more in the advanced cues, but if you feel like that's happening to you as well, chances are you're letting your hook grip go too soon. So I'll do a bonus one, I'll do a third one. It's more for my ego, less for you, just to end the day doing it right. Hopefully. So there you have it. We finally did the clean from the floor, but there's so much more we need to talk about. So again, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe to the Garage Gang Gyms YouTube channel, because after this, we're going to be talking about more advanced stuff other than just holding that hook grip longer. We're going to be, after that, talking about certain ways that we can assess and address common faults and common mistakes that people have, whether it's talking more about looping that bar around, losing speed, whatever it is. We're going to show you exercises that you can incorporate into your programming so that you can continue to get better. And then we're actually going to follow it up with a programming video of how you guys can create, based on what you're lacking or what your weaknesses are, you can create an entire program dedicated to getting better at your clean, whether it's 2 times, 3 times, or 4 times a week. So subscribe to this channel so you guys don't miss it. This is Coach Josh with GarageGangGyms.com. I'll see you next time.